Challenging at best is how people who have been diagnosed with rare diseases describe living with that diagnosis. On this Rare Disease Day, we're going to find out more what it's like, how people cope with rare diseases. And later in the program, why Kentucky tourism officials are targeting international markets. And is it working in this down economy? We'll talk about that next on Outlook. The program is Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb, and we're glad you joined us. You know that there are nearly 7,000 rare diseases in the United States, but only about 200 of these diseases have approved treatments. Sadly, the pharmaceutical companies know that they can probably make more money by looking at other diseases that affect more people. And if you're one of those people that has a rare disease, often it's difficult to even get a diagnosis. We're going to talk about that as we celebrate Rare Disease Day today on Outlook. Welcome to the program with me, if you will, Ann Thomas, who is a rare disease spokesperson, and she suffers from a rare disease. And when we get started talking, I'll let her tell you the name of it. It's one of those names. In addition, Chip Kraus joins us. He's a public health services coordinator with the Barren River District Health Department. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, tell us the name of that disease.
It's acute intermittent porphyria.
Okay, and maybe that's something that you've never heard of. Chances are not. It's not one of the more familiar diseases.
Not, yeah.
So what we talked about is the fact that with rare diseases, they're often difficult to diagnose. So how did your diagnosis come about?
About 5 years ago, I presented with asthma as an adult. It continued to worsen. Then my asthma was uncontrolled. And they didn't know what to do for me. I was out of breath. I couldn't breathe. I stayed home inside all summer. And one thing led to another, and my doctor said, let's get you on down to Nashville, to Vandy. So I went there. They did some checkups, 3 different doctors. Couldn't really figure out what was wrong with me. And then in the meantime, I presented with a major attack of this disease. Hospitalized, 3rd day, spinal tap. Neurologist came in and said, could it be that she has this disease? After many tests came back negative. So from there, testing went out and came back that high probability that I had this disease.
And we're going to talk more about that and the treatment of it. But from a district health standpoint and educating people about rare diseases, how does that work?
Well, we really want to raise awareness about rare diseases, because a disease may be rare, but having a rare disease actually isn't that rare, just because the numbers are so many. You mentioned some of the numbers of how many rare diseases actually have treatment, but actually a rare disease is one that affects about 1 per 2,000 people. In the United States, oftentimes they'll say any disease that has less than 200,000 people that suffer from it. So it can be very rare and very difficult to find a diagnosis. The health department does encourage people to have a home physician, or a medical home is like what we call it. So they have somebody that they're comfortable talking with and that actually knows their symptoms both before and after a diagnosis, because sometimes the diagnosis can be mistaken for something else.
There you go, mistaken for something else. And with all the information that's available via the internet, you can just, put in those symptoms and hopefully you'll get a diagnosis. Dangerous. But even with that, very dangerous. Tell us why.
Well, I believe when I was home, I stayed home about 5 months and was unable to climb stairs, walk, load a laundry, raise my hands to wash my head. And I'd put all these symptoms in, what was going on with me. And sure enough, something came up every time, and it was dead on what I had. And then we would be tested for it, and it wouldn't be it. So I was self-diagnosing myself the whole time I was home. Yeah, it was dangerous. I spent hours doing it. And my neurologist said, whatever you do, don't follow the internet. So luckily, me ending up in a hospital stay for several days was the end of my struggles, because I did end up with a diagnosis. And the doctors here really didn't want to diagnose me with it. They said it's too rare. It would be unusual if I had it. So they sent me on to Louisville to the Graham Brown Cancer Center. And I went there. She'd only seen 2 patients in her life. And they, from there, sent me on up to all my records to Mount Sinai, to a hospital in New York. So there, they were familiar with some people. And then they commented on my blood work and, you know, analysis that they did, and came back that I had it.
Well, and you had to breathe a big sigh of relief. Finally, someone has diagnosed what's happening here. And so rare diseases, they have a day designated because they want people to recognize the fact that it can happen to you, and that it's, and so that in and of itself is important.
Right. And the day is 29th, which is a rare day in itself. It'll be the 28th for the next 3 years, but this is brand new. The United States just got on board in 2009. It started in the European countries, Rare Disease Day. Since I've kind of gotten the word out about myself, some people have contacted me between yesterday and today and have just said, hey, I've got a rare disease. Let me know if you ever get something organized. I'd like to be a part of it. So I think it'd be great just to get a little group of us together so we can talk, and not just have to have our family members to talk to, but other people that, you know, we don't mind sitting and listening to, and we understand them completely.
We're talking about, and we're going to talk some more about that, but we're talking about rare diseases on this day designated, as you say, it's February 29th, which is a rare day in and of itself because it's a leap year. And so rare diseases and awareness and the importance of diagnosing rare diseases, because it doesn't happen that often. We're going to talk more about that when Outlook continues right after this. Stay with us. Rare but strong together. That's the mantra for Rare Disease Day. Ann Thomas rejoins us along with Chip Kraus. And Ann suffers from a rare disease, and so she came on the program to share that, you know, you're not alone if indeed you are also suffering from a rare disease. And that's, you know, there are different designations, European and domestically, as to how they identify what a rare disease is. But there in the U.S., statistics indicate there are nearly 7,000 rare diseases, and there are only about 200 treatments for those rare diseases. You were fortunate in the sense that they found out what you had. Right. You can then look at treatment. So this was a genetic predisposition to this particular?
It is. It's a mutated enzyme that I've inherited, they think, from my father. Okay. And it's laid dormant in my system. The doctors in Louisville feel like that when I was going through menopause, premenopausal, that
it triggered
it allowed it to trigger itself, and then it presented, and I had a full-blown attack at that time. But it had laid dormant for years until I was about 45.
And please tell me the name of it again.
It's called acute intermittent porphyria. Porphyria, we have porphins in our system. This is an enzyme that is heptic in my blood system, and it affects my nervous system. So I have had problems with nerve damage in my hand and feet, and then it can cause you to have some paralysis, dementia-like feelings. There's been several things, oddities that happen, and as they come, I just, you know, chalk it up to this disorder.
Well, I'm grinning because, you know, you sound like an expert, and I guess when someone lives this, no one can tell it like someone who's been there or someone who's living it. But there were times, I'm sure, throughout this when you just felt so frustrated, like, please, can somebody just help me?
I was. Matter of fact, I had one of my doctors here. She was a female. She grabbed my hand when I was in her office, and she just had tears in her eyes. And she said, we are going to find out. We're going to stick with you till we fix it.
Figure it out.
And I just meant so much to me that she was trying so hard, and also my general physician. They just never gave up on searching for a cause for what was wrong.
Found the diagnosis, but as you indicated, Chip, earlier, there are not always treatments for these particular rare diseases. In your case, you have to treat the symptoms?
I do. I treat it once the attack arrives.
Okay.
I can stay on a high carbohydrate diet. It turns to glucose. This problem filters through my livers and kidneys, so I always stay on high carbs. There's no alcohol. I stay around environments that are clean with no smoke. There's a lot more to go on with it. I always wear a medical ID bracelet because there's an unsafe drug list, and it kind of goes on, but I do adhere to that really strict.
And so as far as the Barren River District Health Department is concerned, you talked in the first segment about raising awareness. That's critical. Just, you know, making people aware. Like Ann, don't give up. And I am hopeful that others will have, you know, medical people who are just so into it that they'll want to get to the diagnosis.
Right. At the health department, we say that diseases can be rare, but hope shouldn't be. Because as long as you keep hope, then you have a chance to actually get better and live a healthy or productive life. So don't give up. Sometimes you may go to the doctor and not get a diagnosis, but you still have to stay strong. Fortunately, Ann had a good doctor that was able to stay with her and help her through that. And that's why we advocate for people to have some type of a medical person that can help them through the process, because it can be very lonely and very frustrating, especially if you're having symptoms that you don't understand or your medical caregivers don't understand. Also, a lot of people don't realize that rare diseases, the diagnosis just doesn't affect the person, it also affects the whole family, because the whole family is going to have to deal with this, and they're going to go through the same isolation and periods of confusion and isolation from the rest of the community on what should we be doing,
That's a very good point. You're not in it alone. And like you mentioned how nice it would be to have a support group, not only to know that you're not alone, but also to not burden your family members, you know, who probably have been there for you through the whole thing. Now, some of these rare diseases can be fatal. You know, there are many different variations on the theme of rare disease, I suspect. Yeah, actually, 75% of rare diseases actually affect children. And actually, 30% of these children don't survive till their 5th birthday. Because that would account for a lot of childhood leukemias and some of those type diseases. And those could be very upsetting, not just for the families impacted, but also for the entire community. If you've ever seen a grown man sitting next to their child in a funeral home, it can be a very touching, very emotional situation. So hopefully we can raise awareness about this, and hopefully we can get people the treatment and diagnosis that they need before we have those situations. No doubt, and we talked earlier about pharmaceutical companies, how, you know, research and development dollars are often targeted in other areas where they might affect more people. Mm-hmm. So that in and of itself is troublesome.
Right. Somebody, like it says, 1 out of 2, if you're under 200,000 people in the United States, it's considered a rare disease. Usually it doesn't reach 200,000. It's in the hundreds and the thousands, or even it could be 10 or 5 that have a rare disease. So there is no money in it for a pharmaceutical company to put their time. So what they're trying to do is just raise an awareness and acknowledge that there is a large amount of people in your community, in your state, in this country with rare diseases. And there are about 10%, I guess, that have a pharmaceutical
protocol? Or?
Yes, that's what I was wanting to say.
Okay.
That they have a protocol. Mine, when I end up in the hospital, they always do glucose. They give me pain medication, and they stick with me till this. It's a severe pain in your abdomen till it goes away, and then they call in neurology, and it kind of goes from different doctors. But there's really not one magic pill that they can give me until it just bides its time, and then it's gone again.
And so what would you say to people who are watching this program and who maybe themselves might be suffering from a rare disease or have never been affected by it and yet maybe have some interest?
You know what? I thought of that, and I notice now I pay a lot of attention to people when I see they're struggling, or if I see they're slow, or if I see they're bending over and having a hard time putting groceries in a car. I'm thinking, I wonder if they've got a rare disease. You know, just
sure.
It just made me really aware of that. And what I would say would be never give up. Keep pushing. I mean, you're your own best advocate. I go to the hospital, and my husband and I both, he's now very knowledgeable about what's wrong with me. And we both know when we get there that these things need to happen. If they buck us when we get there, like that's impossible, we stick with it and insist. And somebody will say, well, she can't have Benadryl. The doctor's like, anybody can have Benadryl. And when they finally looked it up, she can't have Benadryl. You know, it can cause her to go into a major attack. So my husband and myself work really hard when we end up at the ER on trying to teach the doctors.
So it's a learning experience for everyone involved,
it is.
isn't it? And leave us with some words of wisdom, Chip.
Well, some words of wisdom is, like she said, just keep your lines of communication open with your doctor. If you have issues, be sure to talk with them about what's going on with your life. And if the doctor does prescribe something that you don't think is exactly right, ask them about it, because they're there to take care of you. So when you go to the doctor, make a list of the questions that you want to ask, because the most important thing is that your medical needs are being met. So don't be afraid to talk to your doctor, even if you think the question may be a little strange or a little bit silly, because you're the most important person.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We've been talking about rare diseases and the celebration of Rare Disease Day. When we come back, we're going to find out about bluegrass, racehorses, Corvettes, bourbon, you name it, tourism in Kentucky. Coming up next. Coming up next on Outlook, we're going to be talking about tourism and how that often translates into dollars. But remember, you can connect with WKYU PBS on Facebook and Twitter at the address on your screen. But right now, we want to welcome to the program Marissa Butter, who is with the Bowling Green Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. And you know, on that graphic information, we had blues, tattoos, and people are probably wondering, what is that all about? So before we get into that, we will tell you, in case you're interested in getting a tattoo coming up. But tourism is a huge draw for especially this area of the state of Kentucky, isn't it?
Absolutely. National Park right up the road from us definitely doesn't hurt at all. But tourism in the state of Kentucky is an $11 billion industry. Right here in the Warren County area, the 2010 figures were $324 million of total tourism expenditures. That was up about 5%, a little more than 5% actually from the preceding year. So we are anxious to see the 2011 figures here in the next couple of months. But, you know, just a lot of diversity here, a lot of different types of activities to do for the visitor. You know, we've always kind of touted ourselves as a good family destination, but you know, as we add more and more attractions and more kind of niche activities, just attracting a whole nother, you know, set of markets.
Well, and what we're talking about is the economy, you know, is basically in the toilet for the most part. We seem to be recovering, but a lot of people don't have those expendable funds to go take a big vacation. Sure. So tourism becomes even more important, doesn't it? Because are they still doing the staycations where a lot of people are just going close to home and or staying near home? Staycations
are definitely still very hot, yeah. You know, in Kentucky overall, a lot of our visitors are from our surrounding states. People are coming from right within our region. They're not really traveling to us from very far across the country. And of course, international, as you mentioned earlier, you know, with the All-Tech World Equestrian Games in Lexington last year was a great, or in 2010, it was a great draw for international visitors. And to really put Kentucky on the map, you know, as the home of you know, the horse, you know, we're the bluegrass state here as far as in the United States, and that's part of what the state's campaign is this year. There's only one, and that's kind of what the State Department of Travel Tourism is taking their efforts for now is the things that you can only see and do in Kentucky. And we're very fortunate to have 3 of the first round had 31 places and events on it, and we have 3 on that list with the National Corvette Museum, Lost River Cave, and also then Mammoth Cave National Park.
Wow. So when the equestrian games, as you mentioned, that were held in the 2010,
yes,
you know, that did bring a lot of international visitors to these parts. So that having been said, what was the top 3 as far as countries that came to those games and came to Kentucky? Did they
I don't have that information. I don't. As far as some of the top performers in the top, I know that the United Arab Emirates, they were huge part of that event, and brought over a huge number of horses. Of course, you can imagine the ordeal of transporting a large animal like that. Not to mention the trainers and the riders and the actual people competing. So they had a huge role in that event. I know.
Well, that's very exciting. And so, how do we then get into those markets? Or do we do that at the expense of our state or our United States? How does that work? Well,
the United States is definitely making some leeway as far as trying to really get the visas, the procedures that people have to go through to visit the United States just for a little short leisure trip, get those a little bit lessened. We have so much fear after, 9/11 that I think we went completely way to the extreme. Exactly. And now we're trying to, as an industry, come back off of that a little bit and really explore the ways that the travel industry can help legislators and help the federal government to adapt some of these policies a little bit, based on our experiences and based on what our visitors are telling us, no, I can't come, it's too hard. I have to get, 8 months in advance, I have to apply and plan. And, sometimes people just want to take a quick getaway. They, they start thinking about it. Oh, let's go in a couple of months. We've got some time, and international visitors can't quite do that yet. So there's being a lot of effort made. And yes, we're definitely riding on the Kentucky Travel and Tourism. They have some PR relationships over in England, in London, and so that's certainly helping our efforts as a state to get those visitors. And again, national parks, our crown jewels of sorts here in the United States, and to really be able to promote those. Mammoth Cave's international biosphere. So we've got a lot of great things to tout.
Fortunate in this area. Let's talk about this area, because I alluded to something called blues and tattoos a little bit earlier, and I didn't make that up. I won't take credit for that, but we are actually going to have something with that title, a Blues and Tattoos Festival?
Convention, yeah. It's a convention. Oh. So it's a trade show of sorts, and spectators are more than welcome to come, and some really well-known ink masters, as they call them, and tattoo artists are going to be attending. It's the Black Diamond Studios, they're out of Henderson, Kentucky, that are going to be bringing this event to Sloan Convention Center. It's March 30th through April 1st. So again, if you're in the market for a tattoo, mark your calendar, get out there and see some of these really talented folks. They're going to have art fusion contest, and of course live music there, and full bar set up, and even the Jaeger girls, I think, are supposed to appear. So,
well, it really sounds, and this is the first time that the Blues and Tattoos convention will be held in the Bowling Green, Warren County area, and you're saying it's at the Sloan Convention Center. Yes. So that's a unique sort of something. So how do you decide to welcome these things to this area? I mean, is there some kind of committee that says, well, yeah, that would be a good draw, or maybe we don't want to get involved with that? Is there such an animal?
There's not really such an animal. It all kind of is a case-by-case basis. This gentleman that is organizing the Blues and Tattoos Convention just, picked the Bowling Green market as a place he wanted to bring this type of show. He'd done similar shows in his market and wanted to bring it to another part of the state. Of course, our sales team at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, tries to solicit and get, different types of groups in. We've had good success over the past several years trying to beef up some of our more automotive events, because as the home of the Corvette and the historic Beach Bend Raceway here, we're really attracting the attention of a lot of those types of events. We've got a new one in April, the Challenger Fest, that's going to be out at Beach Bend Raceway, and having a car show as well as part of that. Rally North America is a new event that's going to be passing through Bowling Green. They're Rally Dixie 2012. They take a 3-day journey. They're starting in Indiana this year for this one and ending up at Fort Walton Beach. And they're going to be actually kicking off their starting line on June 20th out at the Corvette Museum. So we welcome everybody to come out and try to, wave them on and wave them off, as we say. Of course, the NHRA Hot Rod Reunion returns for its 10th year to Bowling Green this June, Father's Day weekend.
Well, and there's also an effort I've seen before, like, for example, with the Corvette Museum, where they try to entice area residents who, it's like, I've lived here all my life and I've never been to the Corvette Museum. So there is a way they make it at a reduced rate and or free for area residents. And that's one way to hook them in. Huh?
Certainly. And like the National Corvette Homecoming, I was just talking about it earlier and how it's such a great event. We were there a few years ago together, and, it's something, again, residents are like, oh, I see Corvettes all the time. What's the big deal? Well, this is where you can actually get to talk to the Corvette owners and that Corvette community, and they're so tight-knit. And there's just such a sense sense of camaraderie and community and fellowship, you know, there, and it's fun.
And it's a different breed. Those who own and love their Corvettes, it's a different breed. And you know, when I travel the country and I tell people that all Corvettes are made in Bowling Green, they're really surprised.
And we find that, you know, different breed, you described the Corvette owners, we find that with the muscle car enthusiasts and with these, you know, modified cars, the fancy, unique sports cars, you know, and they all have their own little community.
Well, and the unique geography, our location here in Bowling Green and Warren County is certainly a draw.
And beautiful road tour opportunities, yes, yeah, and that's another big draw, is to get out in the countryside and things that they can see along the way, so.
Well, Marissa, with the Bowling Green Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, we have lots of events coming up. Leave us with some encouragement to get out and enjoy the area.
There's just always something going on, you know. There's always something unique and fun to do. Again, you know, there's family events. There's also kind of, you know, your more mature crowd events. You know, people can say they're bored in Bowling Green in the area, and we always say, well, you're just really not looking hard enough, because there's always something going on. And you know, with these new events, you know, Craft Beer Festival coming on Derby Day this year to Lost River Cave, and we've got a Bosnian convention coming this year, Memorial Day weekend. I mean,
just lots of things to do.
Wonderful people and opportunities to see and learn.
And you can, of course, visit bgky.com to find out more. Marissa Butter, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb, and as always, we're glad you joined us. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook and Twitter at the address on your screen. We'll see you next time.